Last week, Julia Manchester was able to sit down with two members of Congress. First, we'll hear from Congressman Randy Weber, a Republican from Texas, and Vice Chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Energy. Take a listen.
Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Just to jump right into it, I know that a few years ago, Texas was shaken by a very rare, strong winter storm that brought a lot of scrutiny over the state's power grid. I wanted to get your take on how important it is to strengthen the grid against these increasing climate extremes as we see, what seems to be more what we would used to call rare climate events.
Well, Julia, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and thanks for putting this on. Yes, absolutely. You're talking about Winter Storm Uri, February of 2021. I've grown up on the Texas Gulf Coast. I represent the first four counties of the Texas Gulf Coast, coming down from Louisiana and around the coast there. And I've never seen it, Julia, be 18 degrees on Galveston Island. And that's what it was. And quite frankly, our house was without power. Fortunately, I had a little backup generator in my garage I kept from my air conditioning company when I sold it. So I was able to put that into play. But we actually went and sat down with ERCOT and with the electric. Well, we went and sat down with ERCOT, four of us from Congress, and said, look, we've got to strengthen the grid. We've got to make sure we've got more and more reliability. For example, NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, it's all about reliability. So in Texas, we're used to things, and you may not know this, Julia, but in Texas, we have every kind of wind problem, every kind of storm problem there is. Dust bowl, we've got hurricanes, we've got tornadoes, we've got some earthquakes. Of course, we have ice storms in the north, we have snowstorms. So for us, it's a big, big deal to make sure that Texas, the number one exporting state in the country, has a very, very reliable grid.
Well, what's so interesting to a lot of us, I think, outside of Texas who have never lived in Texas, is that the grid is very independent, I would say, from the national grid. I wanted to get your take on that. Why is it independent, and why do Texans want to keep it that way?
Well, Julia, did you not know that Texas was its own a republic, its own country at one time?
Do your own thing.
Why in the world in 1845 they joined the? I thought we should have annexed the rest of the country instead of joining the Union. But Texans are very proud about what we do, and quite frankly, we don't want the federal government coming in here and telling us how to do things. We want to have as much autonomy as we can. There was a move for two of our friends, Jasmine and the other freshman from, I think it's from Austin or San Antonio. And then I think EOC signed on to force Texas to join the national grid. And we're like, no way, Jose, we're not going there. So Texas is very, very proud, independent, and rightfully so. We produce 65% of the nation's jet fuel in my district. We have 7 ports, more than any other member of Congress. We produce 80% of the nation's military-grade fuel, my district, 3 LNG plants. So what we do is and by the way, the Port of Beaumont moves more military personnel and equipment out of the country than any other port in the United States. Texas is darn proud to have that record and be able to do that.
So post Winter Storm Uri back in 2021, what grade would you give the grid right now in 2025?
Well, it's really bad, as you know. One of the things that we've been paying attention to when President Biden was in office, of course, they had the largest infrastructure bill. They wanted to put 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. They did put it in that bill, and we don't have the grid to support that. So we're wanting to make sure that everybody understands that we ought to have nuclear. We've got 2 nuclear plants in Texas. I spent 4 years in the Texas House before I was demoted to Congress. And I had South Texas Nuclear Project in my district. So we believe in nuclear. We believe in wind. You probably know this, Miss Julia. Texas is the number one energy state. 20% of our grid's energy. About 5% of it is solar panels. We took that title away. It's number one in the state, in the country, I should say. We took that title away from California. So we believe in renewable energy. However, Winter Storm Uri taught us you better have some backup, reliable gas and fossil fuel. We're doing away with too many coal plants. too soon when we could be actually using them until we get our grid built up with all the talk about AI and all the stuff that's coming our way. We ought to be very, very careful about how we manage the grid.
So when it comes to those renewable versus non-renewable energy sources, how do you balance that going forward? Is it that Texas continues to increases its usage of nuclear energy, wind energy, et cetera, while having the non-renewable energy as a backup? What does that look like?
Well, for me, and I've thought about this for a long time now, for me, it would be better. Of course, there's ratepayers involved here. It costs more money, and that's the situation where we ought to have a lot of dispatchable energy, we call it, whether it's fossil, whether it's natural gas, whether it's nuclear, whether it's those kinds of things that we could pretty much bring online in a heartbeat. But while we weren't needing to do that, we could use wind, we could use solar. But when we have one of these extreme weather events, we've got to be able to bring it online quicker. To do that, we've got to have more natural gas plants. We've got to ease up on the permitting for natural gas pipelines. We've got to make sure that things get through the EPA, get through FERC, get through all of the agencies it needs to, so that we can build now. Because listen, we are way behind in our energy capability.
You know, for the purposes of this event, we're focusing on the Gulf, drawing attention to the Gulf and some of the extreme weather events we've seen there. You know, it seems that the Gulf, unfortunately, has been hit numerous times, repeatedly, with hurricanes over the past number of years. I guess how, you know, has that at all, I guess, increased urgency to deal with the grid? I know that Winter Storm Uri certainly did, but does the increasing frequency of hurricanes also play into that?
Well, both of them do, Julia. And I tell you what we're doing. You're seeing our energy suppliers here in Texas put in more steel poles instead of wooden poles. There's a move to get as much of that infrastructure, if you will, below ground, so that we don't have to worry about trees taking down high wire lines or high lines, as much of it below ground as we can. So we're absolutely focused on the fact that, you know, hurricanes are a problem for us. And here's the factoid about Randy Weber. Born and raised in a 20-mile radius, 71 years. My first hurricane was Hurricane Carla, 1961, I think it was. I was very, very young back then. And I've been through every hurricane on the Texas Gulf Coast since. So yes, it's important to us. Yes, we need to be very cognizant of that. And not only us, of course, from the federal level, Julia, but also from the state level, watching our state legislators do what they do.
You know, when it comes to emergency response at the federal level, we have seen some cuts to FEMA. I wanted to get your perspective on how that has impacted Texas's response to some of these natural disasters and extreme weather events.
How much time do you have?
It's a lot.
Oh, listen, like I said, I've been through so many hurricanes, and I've watched the three counties that I haven't been through a hurricane in Orange County. We picked up Orange County and redistricting, but I've watched the emergency management departments of Jefferson County, Brazoria County, and Galveston County. There's none finer in Texas. Why? Because, unfortunately, we have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. What we don't like is the fact that it takes FEMA forever to reply. It takes Red Cross forever to get in here. And a lot of times Texans have gone and taken things in their own hands. I've been personally involved in Hurricane Harvey over the airport when we had volunteers bringing food in to a lot of the people who worked at the airport and couldn't get out, and so and stuff like that. Red Cross showed up, and they told the volunteers, "You got to leave now. We'll handle it." And the ladies that were working said, "Well, can't we do both? Can't we stand here and pass out food too? And can't we?" And the Red Cross, for whatever reason, didn't want them around. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty disappointed in the Red Cross and FEMA's slowness. We watch for hurricane debris, Julia. FEMA has agreed to, by law, to reimburse the states, counties for hurricane debris removal. And it takes them sometimes years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. After Hurricane Harvey, we were actually up in some of the counties in Northeast Texas, Dr. Brian Babin and myself, and that we're talking to county judges who said they haven't gotten their bill paid for hurricane debris removal for like going on 4, 5, 6 years. That's unconscionable. There's no call for that.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation about that there was some, divide between Republicans and Democrats over nationalizing the grid. But I am curious, when we take a step back from that in terms of, emergency response in Texas, when it comes to the state legislature, when it comes to the congressional delegation here in Washington from Texas, how bipartisan is that work? Do you find that it's, there's obviously bipartisan concerns, but is it easy to work with your colleagues across the aisle on this?
Well, it is in that kind of situation. Now, Julia, don't miss the fact that I said only 2 Texans, and
right.
Of course, AOC from New York had brought that idea up about making Texas join the grid. So I think you're going to find the majority of there's 38 members of Congress in Texas, 25 Republicans, 13 Democrats, as you know. So I think you're going to see most of them understand that Texas doesn't want to be, for lack of a better term, under the thumb of the regulatory agencies in the United States any more than absolutely possibly necessary. So I think you're going to see a lot of pushback on both sides of the aisle if that were to become a bill in Congress.
Finally, Congressman, I want to end on a slightly positive note. I just wanted to get your take on the role, what kind of role the Gulf region plays in terms of the country's economic and energy security.
Well, you already heard me say we have 7 ports, more than any other member of Congress. Texas is the #1 exporting state that I mentioned. And I think we're the #2 economy. We might be behind California. I have to go back and look at those numbers. But again, Mexico is our #1 trading partner. Canada's our #2 trading partner. I'm talking about Texas. And so for us, the economy is a big deal. Being able to trade is a big deal. Of course, we want to secure the border so that we've got good trade routes. I worked on that in the Texas House and still working on it up here. So it's important for Texas to be able to trade, to be able to ship stuff across the seas, to do business with countries across the seas. It's extremely important to us. Texas, if you may know, and I don't have the current figures, has a huge surplus. I want to say it's $28 billion, which is actually more than the total output of some of these states for all year long. So for us, it's an extremely important thing.
Yeah, it's a big state, has a big impact on the country. So we always are looking at Texas when we look to energy and climate issues, et cetera. Congressman Randy Weber, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Julia, for having me.